Today, we are breaking down the 10 biggest questions facing the tight end position ahead of the 2026 fantasy football season with one of the best in the business, people. Fantasy Points, Ryan Heath. If you have not been following this man and just reading any one of his incredible articles throughout this offseason, you are missing out because your league mates probably are, so go ahead and get on that. But Ryan, great to talk to you, man.
Hey, awesome to talk to you, man. Yeah, really excited to break down some tight ends today. Really excited to just talk ball. I'm so into it. I'm so ready for the season. Let's do it.
Amen, dude. Maybe just, not completely overreacting to every single drop in training camp. Look, we're both excited football is back too, Ryan, but I'm not going to completely let our last 6 months of research, just be overdone by one or two clips we see out there. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I'd say that's reasonable. I got pretty mad about it online yesterday. People can go look at my tweet storm about Marvin Harrison Jr. and people fading Jamar Chase as a rookie for dropping balls in training camp if they're curious on my thoughts on that. But yeah, I'm just ready to talk about our actual research and what we've actually seen players do on the field in the NFL.
Amen to that, man. Again, at @RyanJ_Heath over in the old Twitter sphere. Again, one of the best guys you could be following out there. But let's go ahead and get into the tight end position because, as we know, a lot of different routes you can go. We're drafting running backs and wide receivers all over the course of any given draft, but especially in our home leagues, guys, really can, again, just make or break our overall strategy based on what we want to do at tight end. And the first big question we accordingly got to ask ourselves, Ryan, round two? Brock Bowers in this economy? Because look, we all love Brock Bowers. Okay. I don't think that's up for debate, but it's just like, how do you feel about your roster when you're actively using a round two pick on a tight end? So how do you feel about drafting Brock Bowers as early as round two this year?
So I'll just kind of start philosophically in terms of what should you be thinking about if you're going to draft a tight end in round two? Avoiding the Brock Bowers question. To me, you need to be so confident that this guy whose name you're clicking is going to straight up outscore all of the running backs and the wide receivers that you could draft them around. It is just not true in the leagues that most people play in, whether it's 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, non-tight end premium scoring. Running backs and wide receivers are just as scarce as tight ends are at the top. They give you more value over replacement than tight ends, and tight ends have higher hit rates in the later rounds than any other position. So it's a really high bar that I think you need to overcome to click a Brock Bowers in round two. I'm open to it. I like Bowers as a player. I am in a vacuum, I like the case for him in this Clint Kubiak offense. I think the Raiders could really take a step forward overall offensively this year. We saw Bowers average over 16 fantasy points per game if you just remove when he was playing with the brace on his knee last year in those handful of games that he was playing injured. So I agree, he has the upside that to be worthy of a round two pick. I'm just not selecting him over running backs that I think are going to outscore him. So some examples of that are a Chase Brown, a Derrick Henry, a Ken Walker. Depending on your site, a lot of these home league sites especially, at least one of those running backs goes after Brock Bowers in those ADPs. So in that scenario, no, I'm not clicking Bowers ahead of any of those backs. I don't want to forego the more valuable position there for guys that I think have similar just fantasy point per game upside. But yeah, I've been clicking some Bowers in best ball where you've been able to get him after most of those running backs most of the summer. I'm not principally opposed, but that's really my kind of line in the sand.
We have that again. I've been calling it the great wall of RBs that kind of goes around that round one, round two turn. Obviously, pretty much consensus top 6 wide receivers with Jettas and CeeDee Lamb usually being gone. So I'm with you where it does seem like mid to late round two is that sweet spot for Bowers. Using pick 13 or 14 or something like that, man, is going to be leaving an awfully good running back, for one of your league mates to go ahead and scoop up there. So I have been throwing around this super Bowers draft strategy, man, where ideally we get one of these, again, top 4, I would say, running backs, our Gibbs, our Bijan, our JT, or our CMC. And then we loop back around to the later stages of round two to get Brock Bowers. How realistic is that going to be able to pull off? I think in higher stakes drafts, probably not. But again, man, it's one of these things where I feel like we always push back on home league ADP because it's who's drafting? Well, we're about to get into August, man. So at some point, we got to start paying more attention to the fine folks over at ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper.
Yeah, 100%. It's it's a tough thing for me, especially this time of year, because I especially in August, I want to write my content toward the platforms that most people are drafting on.
Right.
right now most people aren't drafting, but they're about to be drafting on all those platforms. The ADP will look like that for at least a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's really hard to kind of balance exactly what you're talking about there, which is why I just gave that sort of wishy-washy answer on Bowers. So yeah, appreciate us clarifying that.
It was, interesting. Again, I like the stat where without the brace last year, he still averaged north of 16 fantasy points per game. And that's kind of where I've come around with Genty a little bit as well. Everything went wrong last season. The injuries to Bowers, the injuries just, again, not even injuries, I guess, across the offense, just them absolutely sucking and firing Chip Kelly before the end of November. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And you look up and Bowers was still pretty freaking awesome when he was out there. Genty, didn't live up to his top 10 expectations, but still kind of a mid-tier RB2. I did look at the number of top 12 performers per game, not trying to be that guy, on a bottom 10 scoring offense over the last decade. There's only been 4 quarterbacks. There's been 14 running backs, 12 wide receivers, 24 tight ends, though, man. It does seem like this position is a little bit more able to deal with bad offenses. Or maybe the actual solution here is, offenses that are feeding their tight ends enough to put up these sorts of numbers. Maybe that's not the best idea in the year 2026.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that, especially for like later round tight ends as you get down the board, especially the kind of like flex archetype tight ends, like the pass catcher only types. On the bad teams, those are the ones that's when those tight ends get on the field, when they're in constant passing situations. And especially when there aren't good receivers in the offense, it just forces more snaps to that. I guess like the best version of this is like the Harold Fannin of the world, but like that entire archetype, like beyond Harold Fannin, I kind of am looking for just offenses that are going to be constantly in trailing game scripts. So I do think that's like a legitimate point. Yeah.
And obviously kind of the poster child for that last year, Mr. Trey McBride, who, don't get it twisted, guys. I'm not saying he's a product of his offense or anything, but it helped last season. All those injuries that helped out Michael Wilson also did help out Trey McBride. Certainly had plenty of chemistry with Jacoby Brissett leading the freaking league in pass attempts once he got under center as well. So everyone seems to be doubting Trey McBride. I am as well. I'm actually ranking Colston Loveland ahead of him, which I fully understand, Ryan, could make me look even more dumb than usual, a short 6 months from now. I just don't want to use a round 3 pick on someone likely catching passes from Carson Beck in December. Is that fair?
I think it is fair. Yeah, honestly. McBride is interesting for me because he's a player where you're tempted to say, well, we're overthinking this. Like this guy was just awesome for the entire last year. We're all fading him now because we think that there won't be as much garbage time in the offense. I don't know. It's one of those things where it makes me pause and say, hang on, like, am I actually just overthinking this entire thing? I don't actually think we are. I am much more into basically any wide receiver in round 3 than Trey McBride. And part of that is I legitimately think that Marvin Harrison Jr. being healthier this year is going to be a bigger part of the offense than he was in all of the games that he missed, obviously. I don't think we're getting as much of like the 2 tight end sets, all of this heavy tight end usage where McBride gets to run routes against Elijah Higgins and wide receivers that you've never heard of for most of the season. I don't think that's like what we're getting. So I don't know. McBride to me is just not somebody I'm targeting, not somebody I'm looking to pay a round 3 price for.
He is one of those guys where I kind of talk about there's fades that I feel good about, TJ Hawkinson last year, not to hurt myself, pat on my own back, but like it never scared me not drafting TJ Hawkinson. It does scare me not drafting Trey McBride, man. So again, it's a fade. I think we both realize how good the dude is though, because again, you mentioned it before. It's a great point. If you are drafting these tight ends early, you got to be confident they can score with the wide receivers you're passing by. And over these past 2 seasons, if you do combine wide receivers and tight ends, Trey McBride is one of only 7 players averaging north of 17 PPR points per game. The other part of it, though, it's not just the garbage time stuff. It's the LaFleur-Hackett partnership, man. Your pinned tweet right now, again, one of the best articles I've read all year about just all the different new play callers coming in. Can you say something nice about Mike LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett? Because I'm not sure I can, Ryan.
I definitely can't say anything nice about Nathaniel Hackett. You will not get that out of me. LaFleur, I will defend a little bit in that, yes, while obviously the overall results with the Jets were not great the last time he was calling plays 2021, 2022, but I will say when they got Zach Wilson out of there and he had a 12-game sample of Mike White and Joe Flacco starting games, they did average over 300 passing yards per game, which would have led the NFL last year. LaFleur is very willing to, I think, just go heavy drop back volume if it's required to have something close to a respectable offense. I have kind of argued, like, I don't think he wants to be the fall guy or the tank commander. Like, he's already been the fall guy for a Zach Wilson. I don't see the world where, and this is where it gets into Carson Beck a little bit too. I don't see the world where the Cardinals offense is good or at least like working, and then they decide to throw Beck in and it becomes bad. Like, I don't think LaFleur is going to stand for that necessarily. This is like his chance to be a head coach. I don't know that we should just assume, oh, Carson Beck is coming in week 8 and then no one will score fantasy points in this offense for the rest of the season. So that's maybe like one piece that I'd fight back against, because I don't think any NFL coach like wants to be the tank guy, the fall guy. So I don't know, that just things swirling around in my mind. For me, that's more relevant for like a Marvin Harrison Jr., who's much cheaper than for a McBride. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at.
It is, and you can argue I am overthinking it because it's a similar sentiment with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. I'm thinking Cade Klubnik could be out there on the field, in December. With the Cardinals, I'm with you. If Jacoby Brissett was out there for the full season and we had reason to believe that was going to be the case, and maybe we do, to your point, okay. I'm just looking at the schedule, bro. I have not seen a more hellacious first 12, 13 weeks of the year. Again, guys, Chargers, Seahawks, Niners. That's not great. At the Giants, that will probably be like the tightest spread they have of this stretch. After that, Lions, Rams, Broncos, Cowboys, Seahawks, Rams, Chiefs, Commanders, and Eagles. That is miserable, man. But if we can make it past that, Jets, Saints, Raiders in the fantasy playoffs is pretty nicey.
Yeah, it could be worse for sure. And it is true, like the schedule is awful. That take is everywhere that, how is Brissett possibly going to make it through this? And I hear that. I'm not saying that there's no validity to that theory. I just do think that the assumption that Beck is coming in to tank and also that he's 100% going to be terrible, I think is like where I just push back a little bit. But yeah, I totally hear you.
I would feel better about Beck if we knew that his elbow was back to 100%. If you guys do go back and watch again, kind of the first year that he was a starter at Georgia, hey, he was at the top of those way too early, number 1 overall pick mock drafts as well. Guys like Klubnik and, other dudes as well, Nussmeier out of OSU, who certainly have not, put their best foot forward either. But, I swear, guys, I'm just trying to say something nice about Carson Beck, because, Ryan, anytime I start going too hard against guys who have beat my Buckeyes, people start whispering behind me, and I certainly get it. Let's talk about the guy who I do have again ranked ahead, Trey McBride, Colston freaking Loveland, man. I believe it was 21 additional more targets than the next closest Bears receiver over the course of their final 4 games last year. He took over that offense. If you were starting him in your fantasy championship, you were feeling great. When I'm looking at this landscape, right now, I'm pretty sure he's a consensus tight end 3 in Dynasty land, okay? But if he balls out this year, we're going to be looking at it. It's like Bowers, Mendoza, McBride, and who knows, Beck, probably not Jacoby, or Loveland, Caleb Williams. I think there's a chance, Ryan, that we could be looking at Colston Loveland as a consensus Dynasty tight end 1 this time next year. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. I'm totally with you. I've had in Dynasty, especially, I've had the take that I think Loveland should be very close to McBride for most of the offseason. To me, he just is kind of the better version of the Luther Burden bet that people are really excitedly wanting to make. From week 15 on, Loveland led the team in targets per route run, led the team in fantasy points per route run on a much higher route participation rate than Luther Burden had over this period. I've made the argument for most of the summer that, I think Loveland should just be selected ahead of Luther Burden. That's not the case on every platform and in every format right now, and it hasn't been throughout the summer. I'm waffling a little bit in terms of, I look at ESPN, Colston Loveland's going ahead of T. Higgins, and I'm like, I don't know if I can go quite that far. But he's definitely at an aggregate of all the ADPs around every platform. He's the early round tight end I'm the most interested in drafting. I also like that he has kind of the insulation relative to the Bears wide receivers of, I think there's like a real chance that he leads all Bears pass catchers in routes this year. I know that was like the whole issue last year was Cole Kmet's on the field way too much. Loveland isn't playing a full-time role until week 15 or so, but the Bears really are built to run a ton of multi-tight end sets this year. They have not replaced DJ Moore with any like serious wide receiver 3 option. I know we're excited about Xavier Thomas, and but that like in itself tells me, yeah, this should be like a 12 personnel team, or even a 13 personnel team with Sam Roush that they drafted, right? So to me, it's like Loveland was averaging over 4 yards per route run and a 50% receiving yards market share when the Bears were in these heavy multi-tight end sets at the end of last year. So there's a chance that like the offense just looks like that from week 1 going forward. And yeah, Loveland's a total rocket ship in that scenario. So yeah, he's definitely as I said, the early round guy that I'm most amenable to, that I'm probably clicking the most on average.
So if you are in your home league draft and you can just pretty much, the fantasy football genie taps you on the shoulder and it's like, you can either get Brock Bowers at the end of round 2 or Colston Loveland at the end of round 4. You think it's just kind of a better build to go ahead and get Loveland?
Yeah. I'm taking Loveland there every time is my choice. Yep.
Hell to that, yeah. And it's a great point on just looking at the wide receiver 3, because I thought about that a lot with the Raiders, just thinking like, why are we going to be expecting Jack Bash or like Jalen Naylor got paid, Trey Tucker, but I'm trying to just paint some sort of good scenario for all my Michael Mayer dynasty bags that we're just going down with the ship with. You're right, though. Khalif Raymond, Xavier Thomas, they're part-time gadget players. Why should we expect them to be out there full-time if it'd be coming at the expense of someone like Colston Loveland? So obviously Cole Kmet, not the most talented pass catcher in the world, but also not a complete zero in that area. And we did see last year, man, already plenty of instances of, I'm trying to think, is it the nub tight end or whatever? Like they would legit line up Loveland out wide on his own side, kind of in the boundary, and just let him route up safeties, because guess what? No one can cover this dude.
Yeah, that's like what's so amazing about him and why he like fits kind of all these multi-tight end sets so well is, yeah, he's a tight end, but he can route anybody up as if he was a wide receiver essentially. So that it's kind of just like a cheat code on offense if you have that guy. So yeah, very, very much with you. Big Colston Loveland fan here.
Consensus top 3 tight ends. We've talked about him. Tyler Warren, though, I do wonder, man. We talk about this with Emeka Egbuka. We're like, okay, first 6 weeks of last year, incredible. And got some injuries, didn't finish strong down the stretch. We all know that. If you Benjamin Button that, though, if we had Egbuka's first 6 weeks being the last 6 weeks, oh my God, we'd be freaking out in fantasy land. Could you say there's something similar about Tyler Warren? Because I don't fault him for not getting going with Phillip Rivers under center. They obviously had to try to keep him clean. Alec Pierce, and this blows my mind. Alec Pierce was the only Colts player who averaged more fantasy points after Daniel Jones got injured last season, week 18 against Texans backups, Niners game, what have you. Are we underrating Tyler Warren's chances, though, of just maybe finishing as the overall tight end 1?
I think there's a chance we are, but I guess like my pushback or the reason that I would be on a Loveland at cost over a Tyler Warren at cost is a lot of Warren's scoring and success early in the year really came off of like the play action in the RPO game when the Colts offense was leading the league in passing yards per game, when they were like top 5 in like red zone visits. Like the offense was just working really well. And to me, Warren was kind of more of like a beneficiary of that than like a driver of that necessarily. I think just the way that Jonathan Taylor could just run all over everybody, the way that Jones was just so deadly for Daniel Jones in his career. I just think like all the play action RPO stuff like really kind of builds on that. And Warren, yeah, great player to get the ball in his hands in that way. I don't know that we saw him like, I guess I don't know how like legit that is in terms of, yeah, he alphaing Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce in like the sense that we typically say. I don't really know. So he's one I'm a little bit cooler on, but I'm certainly open to it. I mean, up through when Jones got hurt, his rookie season stats were pretty comparable to like a rookie season Brock Bowers. I think that's like a totally fair comparison to make if you want to argue like, yeah, in year 2, he could get way better. And take over all of this intermediate stuff that Michael Pittman's leaving behind. I totally hear that and get that. I think I'm just betting on Josh Downs more so to do that. But I hear it with Warren. I like cheaper Josh Downs, though, I think.
I hear you on that one. I also do think, and I've been trying to make sure I do this with quarterbacks, but like it does make sense Tyler Warren had a hotter start than someone like Colston Loveland. He's 2 years older. He spent 5 years at Penn State. I understand that he was being the backup to a lot of, quality NFL tight ends. I'm not, pushing back on Tyler Warren, the talent, but it's kind of like what Tyler Shuck, man, like he comes out last year and he does really good things down the stretch, but like shouldn't the 25, 26-year-old quarterback be the pro ready dude we laud him as? Just some food for thought there. Could this Colts offense suck, Ryan? Because I don't love the fact that our quarterback, who has not been good for the heavy majority of his career, is coming off a right Achilles tear. That didn't exactly happen in September. And I know he's going to be back in week 1, man. But you had a great tweet about this, talking about Scatterboo and Judkins and some of the guys come back from those injuries. I feel like we're just so obsessed with the timeline. And it's like, all right, they're going to be back week 1. They're good to go. I don't know if they're going to be anywhere close to 100%, man. And if we are assuming that they're going to be, and we're not even getting a discount with them in fantasy, like that's problematic for all these guys.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, honestly, all of the Colts, aside from like Warren and Jonathan Taylor, go late enough for me where I'm not like overly concerned about it. I'm kind of willing to take the chance of, maybe Jones can be at 80% of his pre-Achilles self, and that could be good enough. But I think for Warren, it's a bit of a concern. For Jonathan Taylor, I think it's a massive concern. As a guy with a round 1 ADP that did not live up to round 1 draft capital in any games where, like those last 2 games when Jones was very injured, or of course, when Phillip Rivers and the Colts were falling apart at the end of the year and not winning games. Taylor is such a game script sensitive running back. He is not that active in the passing game. Very much relies on positive game script, being able to just get fed 25 carries so that he can break off these big plays. And he's great at it. He's amazing at it. But to me, not that different of a bet than a Derrick Henry or than a Ken Walker that go around later, right, on better teams with higher Vegas win totals. So that's like, I totally hear you on the point you make on maybe the Colts suck. But I think like the takeaway is I'm fading Jonathan Taylor in round 1 this year.
It is a good point. Again, it's kind of when I have had pushback for drafting the Cardinals and Jets early. It also goes with the caveat like, hey, Omar Cooper is a round 1 talent. Okay, if you want to take him late, I can live with that because it certainly seems like the bad offense is more than baked into it. You mentioned Josh Downs real quick, and I'm just kind of wondering as a whole because the Bears, for example, I know we didn't quite get into this, but it does help that their passing game should very much be centered around Loveland, Burden, and Dunes. I'd be very surprised if anyone else is going to have, a high target share there. And Indy, assuming Pierce is okay for week 1, which I think he will be, I just don't love the fact that this ankle thing happened so late. If it's Pierce, Downs, and Warren, that's great. We do have these free agent wide receivers hanging out. If we do see a Keenan Allen, a Stephon Diggs, or a Deebo Samuel added to this situation, is that could be concerning for your Josh Downs bags?
I think somewhat, yeah. I think Downs is a great player on his own accord, or at least all of his per route data for years and years tells you that. But yeah, so much of the bet with Downs this year is that he's going to play in 2 receiver sets because they just have nobody else, right? That hasn't been the case throughout his career. He has hardly ever played in 2 receiver sets, been pretty much exclusively an 11 personnel type of receiver. I think he can play outside. I think he can do it in 2 receiver sets. I don't know that the Colts are going to do that if they do sign a Stephon Diggs or a Deebo Samuel or a Keenan Allen. Honestly, all of those guys kind of profile as more like slot types too at this point in their careers. So maybe there's still like an argument to be made. But I think if they sign another guy, that's a signal that maybe they aren't as happy with Downs on the outside, or they want to be able to rotate that a little bit more. So that would legit affect my opinion of it, just because, yes, what I'm really chasing is that he's going to run the most routes of his career by far.
And yeah, it's not ideal at a minimum. I'm not saying you have to fade Josh Downs because of it, but it is funny when we get these signings happen and people always try to be the contrarian in the room and go, no, actually adding someone with, a history of earning targets this offense is a good thing for everyone involved, guys. So appreciate you there. those are the big four early round tight ends that you have to use like meaningful draft capital on in more leagues than not. If you guys are trying to wait, again, another, 20, 30, 40 picks sometimes, we see them go outside the top 100 depending on your format. Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, Sam LaPorta, Harold Fannin. Choose your fighter, Ryan. If you are going to be going out to more of a mid-round tight end, which one of these guys would you like to come away with?
Very easily, my favorite is Sam LaPorta. He's going to be like a flag plant for me this year. I think I kind of don't get why we're drafting him so much several rounds later than we have throughout his entire career. He has been excellent anytime that he has played a full-time role in any games over his career that he's been above a 75% route share. He's averaged 15.9 fantasy points per game, which would easily have been the tight end 2 behind McBride last year. That's an 18-game sample. This is not like cherry picking. That's just like any game that he was healthy and played the whole game effectively, right? And also in that same split, he is either tied with or just ahead of Jameson Williams in targets per route run, in target share, in all per route stats. Like we are drafting Jameson Williams right now as if he's the clear number 2 option for the Lions. I don't think that's true at any time that Sam LaPorta is healthy and on the field. That's not been the case really at any point that they've both been healthy. So to me, I think LaPorta is just this underrated piece of the offense that has the highest implied Vegas point per game total of any team this year. They're expected to score the most points by Vegas lines. We have this history of upside with LaPorta when he's fully healthy and on the field. And we have a new offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, coming in, who has had Trey McBride above that 75% route share in each of his last 29 games. I just think that the tight end routes and the total tight end usage in this offense could be higher than we've been accustomed to. So all of that just compounds into LaPorta's running more routes. He's commanding more targets than Jameson Williams at that time when he is. And yeah, he's a guy more than probably any of the names you just mentioned that could easily have like the outlier touchdown type of season in this offense. So yeah, easily LaPorta for me, my favorite kind of middle, like late-ish round target at tight end.
Checks the offense. We've seen him produce. I just hope the back is okay. I know he's avoiding PUP to get there. I just don't love when these guys have the back surgeries, and I know tight ends got that dog in them and they'll be able to push through it and everything. I hesitate to even bring this up. It's probably nothing, Ryan. I don't want to pretend like I'm, I don't have sources. I'm not an insider, guys, who has all these sources. And then the second the news comes out, I then tell you guys I knew all along. But every once in a while, some of you DM me some interesting things that I do appreciate. Buddy of mine was hanging out in Irons, Michigan, middle of nowhere. He said some Lions coaches were partying at the campground, all of them raving about JMO. OC likes to take some deep shots. Weirdly, they weren't high on their team. This was interesting, though. The tight end coach was apparently concerned about LaPorta being healthy. Again, he avoided the PUP. It's probably nothing. That's the only thing that I see where it goes wrong, though, Ryan. It's Sam LaPorta coming back from the back injury and just looking like a shell of himself. I don't think we can assume that's going to be the case or anything, but I think if that is the only thing we're worried about and he looks good out there, all right, all wheels go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree that could certainly derail this, but I'd also say Tucker Kraft's coming back from an ACL. We have lots of guys like this. I think I get to a point in drafts with LaPorta where it's like I'm kind of willing to take the risk, and also he has amazing contingent upside as well, maybe more so than any other tight end. Like either one of Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams get injured, Sam LaPorta's weekly projection goes up by 3 to 4 points, right? I don't think that's as direct for every tight end in the league where you have multiple easy outs like that. So he's someone that I'm in on. If the back is what kills me, so be it.
I tend to also feel good about just having someone like Dan Campbell leading the charge because John Morton didn't work out last year. He obviously lost his play calling duties halfway through the year. What happened? Campbell took over. It would be different somewhere where we have more of a defensive-minded head coach and we don't have that worst case, play caller to take over if Drew Petzing isn't going to be that guy. I tend to think Petzing is just fine. Again, I've said before, I'll say again, my two favorite, real-life ball knowers out there, Nate Tyson, Benjamin Solak, they both rave about some of the things that Petzing can do schematically. Yep. Again, with your play caller smaller piece. Do you have some similar takeaways? Because I know the Cardinals weren't lighting up scoreboards, but the run game was really good in 2023 and 2024 especially. And, we did get, a lot of it in garbage time, but still some pretty good production from Jacoby and company last year, which I don't think should be completely taken for granted.
Oh, yeah. No, Petzing's run game is one of the most impressive in the NFL to me over the last couple of seasons. By yards per carry, by EPA per rush, like any kind of rushing efficiency stat you want to look at, he is first or second in the NFL, and only ever second to like Todd Monken with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, like that type of thing, right? Like with the personnel he's had, he has done amazingly in the run game. I've been less impressed by his passing games and like the design of his offense. He hasn't used as much of like the under center play action, like motion, like all the play calling cheat codes. I think you can put some of that on Kyler Murray potentially, and I think you can also look at this Lions team, look at Jared Goff, who is one of the quarterbacks that has like used the motion at the snap like the most effectively of anyone in the league. Dan Campbell, who's been like an advocate of that for years and years and years. And I think you can pretty easily say this could be like a really effective marriage basically between a Petzing and a Dan Campbell. I think Campbell's probably going to be somewhat still involved in the offense and the overall vision. I just kind of think all of it can mesh together really well, or at least I'm optimistic there. And yeah, as you said, if it doesn't work well, we have like that safety hatch of Dan Campbell's done it. He did it to John Morton, and he did it in 2021 to, was it Anthony Lynn, I think? Right. Taking over play calling mid-season, making the offense way better. Like that's always a safety hatch we have with these Lions players that I think is maybe a little bit underappreciated for all of them.
Ryan said, I've seen both. Vegas, I've seen one sportsbook have Lions 1, the other one I think they were 3 or whatever. But regardless, everyone expects the Lions to be really good. And why wouldn't you? Other than, you can honestly say they've been the best, most consistent, high-scoring offense of the last half decade. I think the only team that would have an argument for that is the Buffalo Bills. And I feel even better about the Lions this year than the Bills. So certainly get going with LaPorta. Mentioned Tucker Kraft, ACL, a little bit more going on. I hate when there is that comma, ACL and this, but should be back by week 1. I would like to think he's ready to go ahead and do his thing. I'm curious, Ryan, because I did do a little bit of research myself on looking at tight ends and their average target depth, because Kraft and Fannin, even LaPorta last year, which surprised me. I didn't remember him having such a low average target depth. Hasn't been a thing throughout his whole career, so I'm going to leave him out of the combo for now. But Kraft and Fannin were very low. And they got that dog in them. I get it. These dudes are probably top 2. I'll add Darnell Washington there out of respect. But watching these guys with the football in their hand is so freaking fun, man. I feel like it's asking them to do so much, though. And when I went ahead and I looked back at the truly elite, like the top 3 scoring tight ends every year, it was only, I think, George Kittle was the only guy with like a sub 6.5 average target depth that actually posted the top 3 season over the course of the last decade. Now, Bowers and McBride in 2024 were at like 6.6 and whatever. So again, in general though, do you think these lower ADOT tight ends maybe have less of a sky-high ceiling? Because we are trying to, again, if we're using a top 80 pick on the guy, like we would like someone that ideally can rip off that 15-plus fantasy point season.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. I actually didn't realize Kraft had such a low average depth of target last year. That's a bit surprising to me. But yeah, I do think there's something there that really matters, which is that just in general, tight ends are going to see, on average, are seeing less volume than wide receivers. So the ones that hit like the super sky high ceilings are very often the ones that are just very efficient on a per target basis, even like also a per out basis, but a per target basis, like guys that can turn up the field and maximize every single opportunity they get, just because it's generally a lower sample of targets and opportunities, right? So yeah, I really do care about the hyper efficiency for tight ends. I would say Tucker Kraft like checks that box for me in that he's just so special after the catch. Like every single year for the last like 5 seasons, it's been either him or George Kittle that leads all tight ends in yards after the catch per reception, yards per target over expectation. Like any of these like over expectation, fancy ass efficiency stats, Tucker Kraft is just amazing in. So I'm not so concerned about that for him, but I do think that's a legit thing in general, where you want the tight ends that can stretch the field, especially. That's like such a rare skill for tight ends that can pay off in a big way. So yeah, I don't I don't follow that with Kraft, I guess, but in general, I think you're right to think about that.
And just for Kraft's case, and even Fannin as well, I don't think they can't stretch the field necessarily. At least they weren't asked to last season, though. In Kyle Pitts' case, I think you could argue he was doing a little bit too much stretching the field earlier in his career, also dealing with the knee injury. And then last year, I thought they actually did a good job getting him some more layups. That said, wasn't exactly shaping up to be a breakout Kyle Pitts year until Drake London was out of that picture. We also saw Michael Penix leave the equation, Kirk Cousins come in, and really just Pepper's number one tight end, throughout the second half of that season. So I have not generally been drafting, honestly, this whole tier. I've been kind of doing Ricky Bobby first or last. I'm either getting the Bowers or the Loveland, or I'm just going to be waiting until later rounds. Where are you at with Kyle Pitts? Because for me, I can't really get past the Drake London splits, because not only are the splits like fantasy points, which is obviously, the king, and that's what we're trying to score, but the efficiency stuff, and we're talking about Pitts going from one of the most efficient tight ends in the league to dirt average just based on London being on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's 10 fantasy points per game, tight end 17 in games that Drake London was in the lineup. If you just look at the intermediate range of the field, so like between 5 and 15 yards for your depth of target, when Drake London was off the field, Pitts' first read target share in those areas more than doubled. It was like 35% without London, which is like the Drake London role effectively, right? 14% from weeks 1 through 11 with London healthy. He just effectively, he went from not being involved there on like those kind of bread and butter, like high value fantasy routes and targets to being very involved on them for all of like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, I am just not paying the Kyle Pitts price relative to a LaPorta or to a Tucker Kraft, where I just think like the offense has a lot of upside that they can benefit from. I just can't really see that with Pitts and the Falcons. I'm big on Drake London this year. I like him quite a bit just because he has been like such an alpha target earner in so many situations throughout his career in so many different systems, and has been a good fantasy scorer anytime he's been healthy and that there's been like real pass volume in the offense. So he's someone I'm in on. I'm out on Kyle Pitts.
It is one of those things where I don't doubt Drake London's talent. And look at Bijan Robinson. None of us are worried about the offensive system or the quarterbacks or anything like that. That's why we're drafting him inside the top 2 picks in any draft. I do wonder, are we giving Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees a little bit too much credit for just giving prime Nick Chubb the football a handful of years ago? Because these Browns offenses have been rough, man. I know these guys, look, I'm an Ohio guy, all right? I've seen that Tim Couch jersey over the years where it's just one freaking new, bad, sad quarterback after another. But I don't think 2026 Tua and Penix are a good situation. I'm sure they'll both be fine by week 1. These injuries going on, Cooper Rush in there, all right? That's something for another day. But that would just be my concern about London, Pitts, and even Bijan, man. Like, I don't think the Falcons are going to be the worst offense in the league, but if we do look up in December and they're 30th in scoring, I don't think it should shock us,
Yeah, I agree. This in combination with all the praise I just gave to Drew Petzing's run game is why Gibbs is like the clear 101 over Bijan to me. I will say I agree. There's definitely a world where we're giving these guys too much credit. I am really rooting for Michael Penix to win the job or to at least become the starter at some point in the season, just because we've seen such great chemistry with him and Drake London. London averages 20.6 fantasy points per game in 12 Michael Penix starts over his career. Like that's just elite wide receiver 1 stuff. I'm willing to kind of throw out like the play caller in the system and all of those considerations when I have just an elite split like that. But I mean, it like makes me think a little if Tua is actually the favorite to be the week 1 starter. What if this is just like a total check down bonanza to maybe only Bijan and London's left out to dry? That enters my thinking like 5% when I'm touting Drake London. I will give you that.
I have London wide receiver 9. It was funny. I've been barking on Reddit a lot more. I actually love that community, man. They keep you honest over in those streets. But and someone's like, why are you so low on Drake London? I was like, I mean, wide receiver 9 is not that low. Like, I don't need to break out a third hand or anything yet to start counting the guys. But I hear what you're saying. And in that 12-game sample, like the 17-game target pace for Drake London with Michael Penix is 188. So as much as I'm saying, yeah, maybe at the end of the year, they're 30th ranked scoring offense. We could also be in December. It's like London has 15 more targets than the next closest wide receiver. So certainly could see it going that way. Young, baller, target hog wide receivers. Just in general, man, probably shouldn't be missing, the forest for the trees there. Don't be afraid to draft Mr. Drake London. We've gone through the early round tight ends, the middle round tight ends. Now we kind of get to the late round group. Okay. So these aren't necessarily the order of ADP, but we do have these UNC veterans. All right. We got Mark Andrews. We got George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce. If you are in your draft, you wanted Colston Loveland. Crap. Your stupid friend Billy took him before you. Oh, okay. I'll get Sam LaPorta. Oh my God. Someone already drafted 2 tight ends. These things happen in drafts. So if you can't find a way to get maybe LaPorta or Colston Loveland, Kittle, Andrews, Goedert, Kelce, are you looking for any of them? Or it's also okay if the answer is just no.
I'm interested in 2 of them. Dallas Goedert, I think, is just, we're getting a discount for basically no reason. His splits with and without AJ Brown over his career have been excellent. I think Dallas Goedert, you can just click him and expect to get at worst a low end tight end 1 and have the position be solved for you at like a minimum. And that's like all you kind of have to do. I've seen like no evidence that he's washed. I don't think that Eli Stowers has any effect whatsoever on Dallas Goedert's playing time or his route share. This is likely going to be more of like a throwing over the middle of the field type of offense than it's ever been before with Jalen Hurts, at least from what Sean Mannion has said and what like the national sources have said. So that I think benefits Goedert as well. So he's someone I feel really solid about as maybe a little bit more of like a stabilizing floor play for among these old guys, but he's like my pick kind of out of that group. Kittle, I'm intrigued by. I didn't like expect to want to be in on the 30-something-year-old, 33 is he now, coming off an Achilles tear. Like, or if you asked me earlier in the offseason, I'd have been like, yeah, no freaking way, dude. Like, when I watched that injury, I was like, oh, I hope that's not his career. Like that was my instant reaction, but I don't know, man. Like the more I kind of look at this and this offense and just like where we're drafting all of the tight ends this year, I'm kind of intrigued by Kittle, especially because he kind of goes late enough that you could also take like a second stabilizing tight end, maybe a Dallas Goedert, for example, for like the early season. And if you are willing to spend 2 roster spots on a tight end, like the upside for Kittle in the second half of the season is as high as anybody, really. Leads all tight ends in yards per route run over the last 5 years. Leads all players in EPA per target over the last 5 years, which is crazy, ahead of Puka Nacua. Like he is so awesome. He has played through like a laundry list of injuries throughout his entire career. Like the guy's an absolute madman. So him like over a Mark Andrews, over a Travis Kelce for sure for me. So those are kind of the 2 names that I'm interested in that range.
Kittle's been my pick for, again, aliens invade us. We got to save civilization by beating them in a football game. I mean, George Kittle, tight end 1, everyone. I know it hasn't been the case in fantasy, but look, these offenses have been awesome, not needing to feature them. And as you mentioned earlier, like you look at the yards after catch, all the over expectation stuff. I mean, everything tells you that Kittle has made the absolute most of his opportunities. It's just been a more crowded offense. Ricky Pearsall is already freaking hurt. It sounds like he could be out for this season, which would be devastating. So now we got a fellow 30-plus-year-old Unk and Mike Evans, a fellow soon-to-be 30-year-old Unk and Christian McCaffrey. Like, this could maybe wind up being the season, especially in the second half, where we actually see Kittle be the number 1 pass game option in San Fran. The last time we did that, what do? Break the freaking single-season receiving yard record? This does feel like a situation, man, where we are seeing Kittle priced far closer to his floor than his ceiling. I hear you. I haven't even been now I'm talking myself in the draft anymore, but the Achilles and the age thing has been why I just haven't gone all in on it as well. But that seems to be pretty baked in at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree. And like basically every report the entire offseason has been like weirdly positive on it. Like I would not have expected this.
From everyone.
Like
Kittle, Shanny, Lynch, like all parties.
Yeah, and like I'm not like the injury expert guy, but most of the injury guys that are in the industry, our own Jeff Muller at Fantasy Points included, think there's maybe not week 1 because they are playing internationally, but week 2 there's like a very good chance he's out there. is he in his full self until October or November or December? Maybe not, but like there's he could be on the field and we're going to get a look at him. So it's pretty compelling to me. He is someone I think you have to at least think about in managed leagues for sure.
I shout out Jeff like every other show on here at JM Thrive PT. Got it memorized. I should get it tattooed on my freaking forearm at this point. But again, just a blend of fantasy analysis with actually, having a freaking doctorate, knowing what he's talking about with that. So special. Hell of a team over there at Fantasy Points. Obviously, so many cool statistics. Average separation score. Yeah, that's right, baby. We're talking about some ass now. But again, such a cool player suite. And, kind of snatching a certain someone, one of my former employers, chain over there. So again, can't recommend so much about, again, getting in on the Fantasy Points business. The Dallas Goedert thing, you're right, man. He's tight end 14, tight end 15. I just get pissed off at the ridiculous nature of his goal line touchdowns last year. These shovel passes, they gave him like a fly sweep in the playoff game. I mean, it was like, Patullo, your entire offense is broken. He's just out there scheming up plays for Dallas Goedert inside the 5-yard line. But then again, you take away A.J. Brown, and even if we aren't getting those ridiculous gimmick plays, like we know Dallas Goedert is real good. Now he has a chance to be the number 2 option for the first time in a minute. Is Dallas Goedert, if you're in, again, a traditional 12-team redraft league, is he kind of like that tight end you're circling? Like, okay, worst comes to worst, like he's my break glass in case of emergency guy?
That's how I would think of it. Yeah. He's like, it's nice to draft him and then optionally take like a second, maybe higher upside shot on one of like I'd say like extremely low floor, like risky later guys that we might be about to talk about. But yeah, I think he specifically fits like the 2 tight end builds really, really well. And you don't have to take a second tight end. You can easily just take him and have the position figured out, I think.
I think if you want to do it exactly the way you're talking about, you kind of got your floor player and you want an upside guy, absolutely go for it. But don't feel like you have to, guys. We'll figure out the, bye week later. And if you want to take a shot with, a handcuff running back on your bench instead, I really would recommend that. But speaking of, again, some of those more potential upside darts, Dalton Kincaid, Isaiah Likely, Chig Okonkwo, they're all sort of in the same manner. We all believe in their receiving ability to varying, extents. But Kincaid last year, the per route numbers were borderline erotic. Likely's done some really good things in Baltimore, just obviously been blocked by Mark Andrews. And Chig Okonkwo, I mean, year one, in a smaller sample, he was up there with Kelce at the top of the league. Hasn't gone as great the last few years, but again, part-time roles. In Kincaid's case, we're hoping that the knee's healthy enough to have a full-time role. And in Likely and Chig's case, we're like new offenses and they just got paid a lot of money. Are you confident in these guys enough to actually be, pairing them with a Goedert, or do you think that's kind of a fugazi and we're just doing the thing we do every year in the fantasy streets, thinking there's more viable tight ends than there actually are?
I think that's the way to play basically all 3 of those names is to like pair them with a Goedert. I would just draft Dalton Kincaid as like my 1 tight end because I'm just very comfortable saying if this doesn't work out, I'm fine with it and I'll stream the position. I understand that's not everybody. But yeah, I think there's at least a chance. We have to take the idea seriously of what would happen and how likely is it that each of these guys gets a full-time role. With Kincaid, my argument would be I don't know that he needs like a totally full-time role. We don't need him at a 75-80% route share. Like if this guy had a 65% route share, he would be a massive win at cost, possibly a league winner, right? He averaged over 14 fantasy points per game in any games. He ran over 50% of the routes last year, which is really just like the first few games of the season and a couple of playoff games when he was like at his most healthy, right? So I really think like on this Bills offense, there's a chance that he matters for fantasy, even on kind of like a pseudo in between part-time to full-time role. That's part of why I am, kind of attracted to him in the later rounds. I think Chig is also interesting. He's one, going back to our discussion earlier about on these bad offenses that are not bad offenses, but bad teams that are constantly trailing. We see kind of the flex style tight ends get on the field more and succeed more. That's the case I would make for Chig. I think it immediately goes away if the Commanders just sign Stephon Diggs or any of these other free agent wide receivers.
And it feels like it's not if, it's when. That's the problem.
Yeah. So when that happens, yeah, you probably won't hear me mention Chig Okonkwo's name again for the rest of the offseason. But until then, or if it doesn't happen, then yeah, I think that's a case you can make. He's like a totally believable final round dart to me. Isaiah Likely, I think you're kind of paying as if he's going to have a full-time role. Like he has similar ADP to a Kincaid, for example, but he's just on a so much worse offense. Like I have no faith in Matt Nagy or anything that the Giants are doing this year, really. So unlike with Kincaid, I don't think like it's good enough for Likely if he's at 60-65% of the routes. Like you need him playing a legit full-time role, 70-75% plus route share. You need him like commanding 5, 6, 7 targets per game. I think maybe before we've gotten all of this positive injury news and like good looking videos of Malik Neighbors that I was maybe more convinced by that, or it was at least closer for me. Now I'm kind of like, nah, man, like why are we, I'm not buying into Isaiah Likely when Malik Neighbors is at least as good of a coin flip to be on the field in week 1. Like this is not to me a situation. I don't want like the even if he's the second target in the passing game, I don't want that on the Giants like whatsoever when Malik Neighbors is there. So yeah, I'm probably good on Isaiah Likely, even like ignoring the risk of this guy has never really played a full-time route share in his entire career. Even in games he has, it's not like the most amazing target share that he's pulled. I'm scrolling trying to find this right now, but it's let's see. I had this exact stat. Sorry to completely grind this to a halt, but it's something. It's like 4.8 targets per game when he's over a 70% route share or something to that effect. And the fantasy points are good because he played with Lamar Jackson and scored a lot of touchdowns in that sample, but he's never been like outside of like that one game against the Chiefs 2 or 3 years ago. He's never been like this high-end target volume guy at all in the NFL. So yeah, I don't know.
And the whole Matt Nagy part. And then you say, well, who else do they have on staff? Greg Roman. I love the point you brought up earlier too. It's like some of these coaches, I'm sure, I'm not trying to take anything away from Greg Roman. He'll forget more football than I know in my entire life. But is Greg Roman responsible for Lamar Jackson enabling all these great running offenses? I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure Lamar would have been just fine even if he didn't know who Greg Roman was. And Brian freaking Callahan is also in this brain trust, man. So Giants could not be very good. Washington, same. I will say the bull case would still be like likely could/should be a number 2 option there. Same thing with Chig right now, as long as they don't take on another wide receiver, but kind of seems like they will. So if you are going to be investing in more of a bad offense, you want it to be one with less target competition so we can hopefully overcome some of that with the volume. But we don't have to worry about that when we have Dalton Kincaid in a really freaking good offense, also with a chance to be a number 2.
Yep. Yeah, it is really kind of as simple as that for me. Give me the guy that led all tight ends in yards per out run by like a massive margin last year, that is in one of the best offenses in the league, where at least I personally am pretty suspicious of a DJ Moore being like the number 1 target earner engine of that offense. He's someone whose like efficiency data has massively come down each of the last 3 years. Has like got out alphaed by a healthy Rome Odunze, got out alphaed by a part-time Luther Burden and Colston Loveland at the end of the year. Like, yeah, to me, there's like even more of like a target vacuum, if you want to put it that way, for the Bills than any of these other teams. So yeah, I just even more reason to be interested in Kincaid. Like we could totally flip over to week 1 and he could be at like a 45% route share. And I'm 100% willing to say, yeah, I was wrong, drop him. But it's like that's like a risk I want to take on tight ends in the late rounds. It's much more about like what would happen if they hit for me than is this like the safest pick? That's what you got Dallas Goedert for.
If you knew, again, Fantasy Genie taps you on the shoulder and goes, Kincaid's going to be at 75% plus routes. Tight end 5, tight end 4, like that's what we could see as early as week 2 if we get it.
Yeah. Oh, if that was like the one stat line that I knew from the season is Kincaid's route share, and it's anywhere north of 70%. Yeah, 100% exposure. He'd be like my most drafted player, 100%. Yeah.
What if you knew Terrance Ferguson had a 70% route rate. What would that do for you?
I like the way you're talking. Yeah, he's exciting to me. We talked about how valuable that vertical skill set is for tight ends earlier in the show. Ferguson, more than especially any of the other Rams tight ends, but it just in general had one of the deepest like usage profiles in the league last year. His college profile was pretty fun, especially in hindsight. He was more productive than Kenyon Sadiq was at Oregon. Like he's pretty interesting to me. I don't know like exactly where the Rams offense is going to go next. I don't want to just assume just because they ran a lot of 13 personnel and 3 tight end sets last year that like Sean McVay is going to do the same thing. He's always a step ahead. Who knows what the next wrinkle is, but yeah, there's a legit argument to say Davante Adams, great season last year, highly utilized in the red zone in these heavier personnel sets, but like he's a year older. The Rams at least thought about moving on from him last year. They were not even rumored, like confirmed, I think, by McVay to have been in on AJ Brown, like exploring options to trade for him, assumedly because they thought that he was going to be better at this point in his career than Adams. Like, I don't know that the Rams are like 100% certain that Adams is making it through the season. I think that opens up like a huge potential opportunity for a Terrance Ferguson. They would go, I think, a lot more of these heavy 2 and 3 tight end sets, and Ferguson, more than anyone else, any of their other tight ends, is like the route winner, like the field stretcher, the like efficiency guy there. So he is legit interesting. I think maybe a little too deep in like your typical 10 to 12 team managed redraft home league. But it's like someone that should be on your watch list that you should be very interested in. If he puts up like a big stat line in week 1, he would be like an instant, like top of the week 1 waiver wire for me. Or in any deeper formats. I think he's a very interesting late round pick.
I know McVay usually doesn't trot the starters out there for much or at all, in the preseason. But my God, if we got like 2 Stafford drives, Ferguson's out there for 6 of 8 snaps. It's not going to take much, man. It took like some fan fiction from a beat reporter talking about Jonathan Brooks sticking his foot in the ground for everyone to be like, oh my God, look at this. Didn't even need a highlight. Just got some, again, reporting from the practice. I do think Terrance Ferguson is in that, same sort of stratosphere because we as a fantasy community are very sick, but I love each and every one of you for it. It's okay if it's Terrance Ferguson. I mentioned Michael Mayer, but just for our dynasty fiends out there, is there like a deep pull, someone who, no, it's probably not going to do much this year, but is there just a guy where on your dynasty bench, you want them because you do believe in their future?
This is like the deepest pull possible. So this is like a taxi squad dynasty only play. I really liked Tanner Koziel coming out, who the Jaguars drafted on day 3. He just had one of the most impressive production profiles of any tight end over the last few years to me, which is saying something because we just had one of the most impressive tight end classes back in 2025. Gadsden, in terms of team reception share, has 2 out of the top 7 or top 8 seasons by any college tight end over the last 5 to 10 years. That's a list with him twice, like Trey McBride twice, with Harold Fannin, with like basically all of the super productive tight ends that have popped in the NFL. Koziel, of course, doing it against slightly lesser competition, but I mean, he still did it in a power conference, did it at 2 different schools. I don't know that he gets on the field this year, but yeah, long term, he's kind of interesting to me. I can't tell you exactly what his path to snaps is on the Jaguars, with Brenton Strange there, with Nate Borkacher there that they massively overdrafted. He's like a blocking only guy to me. So Koziel's interesting if there were an injury there, if the Jaguars actually did ever try to go like crazy multi-tight end set stuff. Koziel's like a fun taxi squad stash for me.
It is one of those things where and it's great that we spend 3-4 months a year focusing on the draft class. There's nothing else to do January through April. I get it. But we do sometimes overthink these guys. Oh, he's at Ball State and Houston and all this. And I'll look at Brenton Strange there. And then it's like that Jedi and the idiot meme where it's like, look at the production. He's a tight end. He caught a lot of freaking passes. We saw. I'm not saying he's going to be Harold Fannin or Rondé Gadsden, but it's not a bad start when again the dude is literally free. So Tanner Koziel heard it here. I'm pretty sure it actually would be first for that one. So rooting for him, my friend. Last thing, Ryan, you've been fantastic. We've gone through Loveland, LaPorta, Goedert, some of your favorite targets, but in your heart of hearts, like where do you see you kind of attacking tight end in more drafts than not this year? Do you want to try to go early with Loveland? Do you want to try to say, okay, let me get 6-7 guys, then go LaPorta, or do you want to play the late round tight end game? Just generally.
I think in general, I'm most going to lean toward the late round guys. So really one of the names I just mentioned, or like the Goedert 2 tight end thing that we talked about. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not him in redraft, but yeah. That's where I'm at. As I mentioned, we have seen more success out of the tight end position in the late rounds historically, like the last 10 plus years, than at any other position. It's the position that gives you generally like the least edge for having a top 3 guy versus a bottom 3 starter out of any of the fantasy positions. Like, I just don't generally want to spend up on a tight end. There, you have so few chances to draft like these difference-making, league-winning running backs and wide receivers. Your chances just get worse as every round passes. Most of the most important like league-winning players at those positions do come in the first 6 rounds. Like, any chance that you're giving up to hit those guys to draft a tight end, to me, is just potentially wasted when you can get 80 to 90% of the benefit out from the late rounds at the position. So that's just philosophically where I am, where I've been for most of my fantasy football like content career.
Sure.
That's just kind of where I'm at from all the data that I review every single season with like positional win rates and such.
Ryan, thank you so much for the time, man. By the time this is out, I believe your blood, sweat, and tears will also be out. Tell us about the anatomy of a league winner and just how much hard work went into this.
Yeah, man. Anatomy of a league winner. It is my like biggest flagship article every single year. I go back through 9-10 years of data, just figuring out the players that have been on the most playoff rosters in fantasy football, figuring out all the commonalities between them, looking for different traits at every position that leads to guys being these league winners. It goes like heavily into ADP and like where to draft each position, what's the most valuable. I like delve into the psychology of drafters and try to figure out why some running backs get drafted later than they should or earlier than they should. It's like a 22,000 word manifesto just on the art of drafting a fantasy football team. I highly recommend it. I put so much work into it every single year. Anatomy of a League Winner. It should be up over on fantasypoints.com by the time you're listening to this. So yeah, go check it out if that sounds interesting to you guys.
Great content, great stats, great just overall team over there, Fantasy Points. Appreciate all you guys and appreciate you guys for checking out another one of these shows as well. If you liked it, please hit that like button. Hitting subscribe helps as well. But it's a free country, do whatever you guys want at the end of the day. But guys, we're going to be back next week with more specific draft strategy stuff because guess what? August is here. All right. So tiers have been fun. Breaking down the players has been fun. But again, time to start getting into exactly who we should be drafting, when, and where to go ahead and win some money. Get those bragging rights over friends, family, and enemies alike. So for Ryan, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.